Congratulations, you've just been born, you've got your whole life ahead of you, and you can do anything you want with the time that you have. The only issue is, you've been born on Nirn as a mortal. Being a mortal who will die eventually isn't too bad. I mean, it's better than being DAEDRA, where whenever you climb out of that evil god goop for the first time, you have to select which evil god you want to work for the rest of eternity. Being a normal mortal sounds great in comparison, but another issue is that you live in a world that is constantly at threat from both supernatural and political forces, both of which are gunning to change the very fabric of reality. But before that happens, you and plenty of other people are gonna get got. On top of that, depending on the time and era, it's honestly easier to end up in a terrible afterlife than it is to end up anywhere nice. For every sand behind the stars, there's like 5 hells for you to enjoy until the universe gets reborn yet again. And those heroes who saved everyone but you from the apocalyptic event that got you down here in the first place are making sure the universe doesn't get reborn either. Landfall be damned, the Empire is sending their best. Because you still gotta pay your taxes, does not matter if the world is currently on siege from demons. So, given the circumstances, it makes a lot of sense that a mortal such as yourself would strive to live as long as possible, forever even. For the first time in this scenario, you're in luck, because when it comes to immortality, you've got options. Our first selection of immortality brings us to magic. All immortality will involve magic in some way, shape, or form, but in this section, I mean just clean, pure magic, not influenced by evil gods or any gods, although some may be still a little goddish. You gotta, cut me some slack here. Magic is just an all-around good way to become immortal because there's so many different ways to do it. Why not stuff your soul inside of a gem or jar and become a lich? Sure, there's downsides, but there's plenty of upsides to being a lich. Like, it makes you aggressively immortal. You can be killed over and over and over again and be perfectly fine as long as wherever you stored your soul isn't destroyed. Sure, there are downsides like you'll probably end up a skeleton man at some point, but I'm sure there's people who see that as only an upside. Being a lich makes you so immensely powerful, it's pretty nice. Hell, if you're good enough at magic, you might be able to create an entire mini pocket dimension in your soul storage compartment. Wait, what? Well, if that guy did it, then so can you. If lichdom seems like a little bit too much work for you, then maybe becoming some form of undead, but retaining all your faculties was good enough for you. Sure, being undead isn't really being alive, but it's not that bad. It's close enough to being immortal. Lord A-Slip managed to do this somehow by being a Solstein Draugr, and not only remaining a powerful mage, but staying completely sane and sentient. And he's not even evil. He's a good guy, actually. If being a skeleton or zombie man isn't your vibe, then don't worry, good old mortal magic still has some ways to help you out. Just being a master wizard seems to extend one's life by a lot, although it doesn't stop the aging process. You may stay a hardy 31-year-old wizard for a few hundred years, but when you hit that 900th birthday, don't be surprised if you realize you started graying and got crow's feet around your eyes. It really does seem that just holding some sort of master level of understanding and control of magic extends your life, as we see many mages throughout the series to be far older than anyone normally would be, and they never mention their discovery of immortality. And again, they still do age, just really slowly. Still, you might age, but seems like a pretty good deal to me. Read enough books, cast enough spells, and you'll outlive your children. Now, who wouldn't want that? It's not to say that everything I just said about that was 100% true. There's likely some sort of actual magical attempt to live that long that you need to do, but it's just so common for master mages to do this, so no one even cares or sees it as anything stand out. So if just knowing that much magic and being able to use it doesn't actually fully extend your life, and you really do need to do something, it's evidently so normal and easy for a master mage to do that you might as well just come naturally. There have been some total anti-aging magics attempted, but to differing levels of success. Gyron Vardengroat, the legendary sage Breton mage, managed to halt his aging completely, but in the end, he didn't know which of his many potions did it. Despite the fact that that was the whole point of the project he was working on, I guess he got mad after it wasn't working for a while, and must have stopped taking notes while mixing more potions. But hey, it means there is a potion out there that can do it, you just gotta figure it out for yourself. Now, there is a less nice for you way to go about becoming magically immortal. You could end up just like the Augur of Dunlane, a mage at the College of Winterhold who wasn't a master and really had mostly a talent for restoration magic of all things, still somehow managed to turn himself into this. And mind you, this was not the goal of whatever experiment experiment he was working on, this just accidentally happened. Now he's a mass of magical energy, but he's still all there in the head, so it's not so bad. And on top of that, he now seemingly has a crazy amount of knowledge in his form, and that leads me onto a little tangent. So the only other time in the Elder Scrolls we see the term augur used in this way is in ESO with the Augur of the Obscure, a goofy-ass being with a massive amount of knowledge on almost anything and everything, and thanks to the good old Psijic Order, he has to tell you the truth no matter what when asked a question. The only issue is you have to ask him directly. You can't just say, tell me everything. You gotta know what you're asking for. And of course, he claims to be from the adjacent place, a mysterious and just downright insane realm that we know very little about, where things like Cityface reside. And even if you don't know what or who Cityface is, you can just sort of look at this depiction and say, yeah, that place is probably a little weird if this guy lives in it. So I guess this means that augurs are just beings of great wisdom and knowledge, or maybe, mind-bendingly so, it might mean that you have a connection to the adjacent place. Now, does the augur of Dunlain have a connection? I don't know, just an idea, mostly because I wanted to mention the adjacent place. Finally, there's Glomoril, an ancient artifact or spell mentioned first in Arena of all things, and has only briefly been talked about ever since, although still briefly throughout the entire series. It was made by the legendary mage Shalador, who apparently stole the secret of life from Akatosh and used it to make Glomoril. We know next to nothing about it, but it can definitely make you live a long time, among other things probably. There's more ways to become immortal within mortal means. There's apparently some magical plants that can make you immortal and some other stuff. Hell, you can even turn yourself into a celestial being. But to go beyond mortal is probably where most people are going to go if being a lich is too much for them. So our next stop is... the evil guys. Well, to start off, we have vampirism and lycanthropy. Now, vampirism is obvious. Vampires in all media are immortal, except, like, I don't know, that one YA novel series, I guess? That's all I can remember from reading it. Well, guess what? They're immortal in this series, too. Shocking the masses. So why become a vampire? Well, there's ups and there's downs. Some of those downs being, well, there's about 1 billion vampire clans on Nirn, and all of them act differently from one another. So while becoming immortal by being a vampire is easier and faster than discovering the arcane secrets to life, you might just end up getting stuck with a very shitty type of vampirism. Sure, join Skyrim's Volkihar and have the sun only drain your powers by a lot, and well, I assume it still hurts. I mean, listen to that sound effect. But you also get a crazy transformation, or be lucky enough to end up joining the clan of the first vampires, with the head being literally the first vampire, and get 0 downsides and only upsides and become incredibly powerful. Or you might get bitten in Cyrodiil and just die in the sun like any other type of vampire. Wow, so cool. Yeah, you might have to end up spending the rest of your life in a cave for 90% of it. Werewolves, on the other hand, I didn't think were immortal or anything until ESO's Dark Heart of Skyrim storyline, where an army of werewolves and vampires join together, and the fact that they're like better than mortals and should rule over them because they're immortal. But like that dude in the Companions in Skyrim is an old man and a werewolf, so really, I don't know. But let's just go off the idea that yeah, some can be immortal, because sure. Anyway, there's a hearty handful of different types of lycanthropy, and honestly, your biggest problem, unlike vampires having the chance of being really shitty and a potential eternity in Cold Harbor if you're killed, your biggest problem while being a werewolf or wereboar or any other were creature is just here seen coming to fuck with you. Just like ruining your life for the sake of the hunt or whatever his weird goal is. Oh, what is that? You're trying to live a normal life? You're not killing enough people? You're not hunting enough in the name of the god of the hunt? Okay. Ruin your life. Boom, you ate a child. That's his modus operandi. The Daedra can make you immortal in weirder and more directly Daedric ways, let's say, by turning you into a vestige. Vestiges are basically Daedric copies of non-Daedric beings. All sorts of things can get turned into vestiges. Dragons, animals, and most importantly, you. You can never truly die because you're like a Daedra now. When somebody kills you, you just come out of the evil goop like the rest of the Dremora would. Only issue is most people are more likely to end up a soul shriven rather than a cool, unkillable, normal person. No, see, most people who are going to get turned into a vestige, even if they still have a good handful of their faculties in place at the beginning, will eventually just end up becoming basically a hollow undead from Dark Souls. Still immortal though. But who knows, maybe you're just built different and you'll be fine. Another odd way is binding yourself to oblivion, or well, a singular realm at least. It's like becoming a vestige, but probably a lot harder and with less pling pling plong. As far as I know, we only have one example of this, and it's our favorite feathered demigod elf, Umoril the Unfeathered. See, Umoril was the direct champion of Meridia, and there's a big difference in that than just being some Joe Schmo with a Daedric artifact. Just getting Mehrunes Razor may get you called his champion, but he doesn't really give a fuck about you. He just wants you to off people with that artifact. No, a real champion is someone who is close to a Daedric prince. You've got their favor and their power. The Navarine and Indoril Nerevar were champions of Azura, Mirak was the champion of Hermaeus Mora, and Umoril was like that, but for Meridia. These two were real close, and when Pelennor killed Umoril, he had one last trick up his sleeve. Somehow Umoril had his soul bound to her realm and got reborn in the evil Daedric goo like any other Daedra would. So get in good graces enough with a prince, and maybe you too can have all the benefits of being a vestige without being a vestige. And finally for Daedra, while I'm sure there's a few more examples I could bring up somewhere, there's one that sort of bugged me ever since I saw it. In ESO, there's this one quest where you help out a Telvanni wizard by getting her to be immortal. And you do that by getting her in contact with a Dremora who can just grant that wish like a genie. Of course, with the catch that one day he'll come back and drag her to oblivion personally. Very devil at the crossroads of you. But yeah, sure, this Daedra is called the Duke of Black Covenants. But like, he's still just a Dremora, so what's so special about this dickhead? Guess some Dremora and Daedric princes just got that kind of power. I mean, sure, why not? After all, the smallest scamp is like 1/1 billionth of a god, so sure, some big-wig Dremora can be a genie. So sell your soul and become immortal until further notice. But speaking of gods, we have our last segment here. Ah, who doesn't love some good old godhood? This is probably the best kind of immortality a mortal like yourself could ask for. Plus you get powers and a church. There's a saying, a phrase you hear a lot of people say when talking about Elder Scrolls lore and about gods, and that's, if you can convince enough people you're a god, you'll become one. Which is true, but they make it sound a little too easy and a little too simple. When it comes to ascending to godhood that way, it's not as easy as it sounds. We aren't talking about starting some small cult in the mountains or anything. You can't become a god by being the Elder Scrolls Jim Jones. No, you need to be Elder Scrolls Jesus. You have to convince a lot of people of your godhood. And along the way, you'd probably become a god for some other reason with how long it'd take. I mean, dude, running a cult is no easy feat, especially when there's just gods who live on Nirn already. Like, actual gods. You're gonna convince the Wilder King's followers that you're more worth their time than him? And that leads us on to our next method of godhood and everyone's favorite, mantling. Now, I don't want to get too deep into the walking ways and that level of dusty lore, where half of it is just stuff that fans generally agree upon based off 3 lines in an in-universe book. So let's not worry about stuff like this and stuff like that, for now at least. That's a whole other video altogether. So mantling is the act of becoming so much like a god that you and the god become indistinguishable and in turn become one being. Sometimes this can be a very lengthy process, and other times it is a very fast one because it's integral to how the god works. Like with the recently mentioned Wilder King, for example. The Wilder King, or Wilder Queen, is very often mantled by a new mortal, taking the position every now and then. So the process is pretty fast and simple. Now, it's important to note that this isn't just a position that a mortal takes over. It's the melding of one being with another, a god. So yes, it is a drawback if you wanted to live forever, because you are also now a completely different person, but I mean, the original you is somewhere in that mixture. We don't know many of the specifics of the past events of mantling, but our best visual of it is in Oblivion's Shivering Isle DLC, where famously at the end of the DLC, you become Sheogorath, which seems like a short process, but really ever since the moment you step foot in the DLC, the process had already started. Every step of the way, you were becoming more like him, you know? So you still want to be immortal and you still want to be a god, but don't want to go through the whole becoming a different person process, which is understandable. Well, there's still another way. Well, there's a lot of ways, but the way I'll be talking about is probably the most straightforward of them. Get good. Seriously, just become so powerful that you become a god. Why not? Seriously, who needs Chim? Who needs mantling when you can just do what our old little pal Mannimarco did and just become such a powerful magic practitioner that all it took was getting the Mantella, a super powerful and important artifact, to push him over the hill to go from super powerful wizard to divine being. I mean, he just did that. Like, it just happened, man. Which, while straightforward, is also probably easier said than done. Okay, I hear you. Becoming a god has a lot of weird ins and outs, and all the other ways sound really bad or hard, and you just want to live forever and not have to read books or strike up a deal with the devil, so I give give you my last option. Divine Servant. Yeah, why deal with worshippers and prayers by being a god when you can just do a god's bidding and still get to live forever? Sounds like a good gig to me. There's plenty of examples of immortal servants to gods, but the one I want to talk about is the Drake of Blaze. See, during the time of ESO, the Imperial City was just completely fucked up by Molag Bal. That's a problem for a lot of reasons. One big one being is the dragon fires are there, and that's important. Of course, the dragon fires are out during ESO because there's no Dragonborn Emperor and there's a full-scale Daedric invasion going on. But if the brazier that holds the dragon fires were to be destroyed, well, I don't know exactly what would happen, but it'd probably be bad for the future. Luckily, our fair lady, the Drake of Blades here, gets to become the guardian of. She gets imbued with the power of the dragon fires and becomes an immortal guard to protect the brazier until a new Dragonborn Emperor comes along to relight the fires. Which sounds like a nice gig until you think about how, she's probably not allowed to leave the room ever, so it's kind of a give and take. Not to go back a topic, but Nocturnal does a very similar thing with the Twilight Sepulchre. Except for that, well, you gotta die first. So as long as you're okay with guarding a room for eternity, you might be the perfect match for the job. Now, obviously, there's other examples and other ways of achieving immortality. Hell, there's new ways to do it in, like, each entry of the series. But I think that's enough for now, and with that, the video is over. You should follow my art social medias because, please, for the love of God. And anyway, I'm out of here.